Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of 2000's Represent. We're in our first cycle of 2000, and we're talking about a movie on this episode. And this episode, we're talking about American Psycho. So, just a kind of cult classic, very early 2000s, literally in the very first year of the decade. Like I said, picked up a cult following. It holds up to multiple rewatches, kind of in a way somewhat similar to Fight Club, where you could look at it from a different perspective on like a second or third viewing. Like there's a lot of stuff that's kind of left up to the audience. It's left a little bit ambiguous. Again, I'm with this series and the 1990 series. With movies, I'm kind of going in with the expectation, hopefully, that people have already seen the films that we're discussing here. So if you haven't watched American Psycho, I would recommend checking it out. I most recently rewatched it on, I think it's on Amazon Prime. But then also a few years ago, I saw it at a late night film screening. Just an excellent film. Great performance by Christian Bale. It's kind of funny because I think this came out like the same year as Shaft, maybe. I had to look that up. Let me just take a look at the Shaft movie. I'm pretty sure it was 2000. Let me just double check that. Yeah, so same year as the Samuel L. Jackson Shaft movie, which also has Christian Bale. And it's kind of funny, you can definitely draw parallels between Patrick Bateman and whatever his character in Shaft was. It almost feels like the performance in American Psycho is kind of maybe left like a little bit of that character is embedded in his performance in Shaft. I may discuss Shaft on this series at some point. But right now we're talking about American Psycho. I have some cool some notes here about it. Obviously, as we saw in the last episode, we got this brand new basically notebook. So let me just get to my notes for American Psycho, and then we will discuss the plot and everything like we do on these kind of episodes. So it was released April 14th, 2000 in North America. I think that was like the wide release, I should say. And then January 21st, so a couple months, January, let me see, February, like a couple months earlier at Sundance in January 21st of 2000. So it's based on the novel by Bret Eaton Ellis. So some interesting things about this when I was doing my research is, so Mary Herron was the obviously directed this movie. I think she wanted Christian Bale right away, but the distributor of the film, Lionsgate, for some reason wanted Leonardo DiCaprio in the role. I could totally see that. I think that the film would work with DiCaprio as well, but I definitely feel this is one of Christian Bale's one of his more iconic performances that kind of opened a lot of doors for him in like other films like around this time period. So it would be interesting to see what DiCaprio would have done with the role, but I definitely think this is a kind of like an irreplaceable role for Christian Bale at this point. But so she wanted Christian Bale. Lionsgate wanted DiCaprio. So I think they initially got rid of her, and they did bring in DiCaprio. They also brought in Oliver Stone to direct it. But apparently there was some creative differences between Leonardo DiCaprio and Oliver Stone, to where they both decided not to do the movie. They brought Mary Herron back in as the director, and then she was able to get Christian Bale in the role. It's kind of got a cult following. It came out and did fairly well. I remember doing some research for this and saying it kind of became like memes about it around 2010. Even though I remember seeing memes about this movie like in like 2005, 2006 maybe. There was a lot of clips on like You're the Man Now Dog back in the kind of like mid 2000s with scenes from this film. So I feel like the meme culture kind of like was already kind of rolling with this movie well before 2010. That's kind of like the thing I was reading was saying, it was like in the 2010s it became, maybe even the memes became even more widespread at that point. One thing I have written here in my notes is one of my favorite scenes of the movie, and it establishes everything so well for these characters, is the business card scene in the beginning of the movie. So they're all sitting around a conference table. Um, Patrick Bateman, Christian Bale's character, pulls out a little like silver business card holder. I think I think Bryce is the character played by Justin Theroux, and he's like, "Is that a gram?" Think he gets like drugs. He's like, "No, new card." Slides the card across, and everybody they like the card. It's got it's Patrick Bateman like vice president and he's like, it's just these characters are just so smug. He's like that color is called bone, and that the lettering is something called silly and rail. And he's like, and then they look at it, they're like, oh, that's pretty nice, that's pretty nice. And then the other guy, I think his name is Van Patten, pulls out his card. He's like, that's nothing. Check this one out. And he's like, just like the way this character, like his facial expression, the actor playing, I think it's Van Patten. He's like, what do you say about it? He's like eggshell with Romalian type. He does this little quirk of his mouth. He's like, what do you think? Like, they're basically just trying to one up each other, and he's like, nice. You can definitely like, and then you have the inner monologue. He's like, I can't believe what is it? He's like, can't believe Bryce prefers Van Patten's card to mine. And Christian, you can tell he's just getting so like upset over just like a business card. But the interesting thing with the business cards is they're basically, with the exception of like the coloring of the card, the font, and the names of the characters, they're the exact same business card. It's the exact same position, exact same like phone numbers and fax numbers and all that. Which just goes to show that basically all these characters, you could put Justin Theroux in the Patrick Bateman role, and it probably wouldn't make a lot of difference because these characters are all very just interchangeable. There's a running joke where Jared Leto's character, Paul Allen, is constantly referring to Patrick Bateman as some other character. It's like Marcus Hallestrand or something. And like, it just goes to show that these characters are so, like, I don't want to say generic, but they're basically all so similar that you could mistake they're mistaking each other for other characters. Anyway, the scene goes on further to where Bryce pulls out his card. He's like, you didn't see nothing yet. He's like raised lettering, pale nimbus, white, and he puts a business card down. And they're like nice or whatever. He's like, and then he's like, let's see Paul Allen's card because like earlier in the film, Paul Allen gives the card to Justin Theroux's character, and just the expression from the other three actors in the scene, like Justin Theroux and the other two actors, not Christian Bale's character, but they kind of look at Patrick Bateman. They're like kind of glaring around. They're like, it's almost like you don't want to do this to yourself. You don't want to see this business card, and they're kind of like very standoffish. They're just like I think he like looks at the card. He's just like, and just the expression of these characters are like, it's like, don't do this to yourself. Don't like look at Paul Allen's card, and then he freaks out over Paul. He's like, look at the subtle thickness of it. He's like, it even has a watermark or whatever it is. I'll leave a link to the description of that scene. It's one of my favorite scenes of the movie. It establishes Patrick Bateman's character and kind of all these other characters for being basically all very similar. But that's just a great scene there. The soundtrack, you got a lot of great '80s tracks on this. It's set in like the mid '80s, so you have Huey Lewis and the News, of course. You have Genesis in there. There's Walking on Sunshine is featured in the scene. But yeah, great soundtrack. Um, Willem Dafoe is also in this film, and there's some great interactions between his character and Christian Bale's character. And from what I was reading, they filmed this scene with Willem Dafoe's character, 3 different ways in 3 different takes, and then intercut those takes into one scene. And so the scene is basically Paul Allen has gone missing or been murdered, depending on how you want to look at the movie. But they bring in Willem Dafoe's character to kind of he's investigating what's going on, and he's questioning Patrick Bateman about Paul Allen and stuff like that. And the scene was filmed. The 3 ways it was filmed was where Willem Dafoe's character knows that Bateman is guilty, Willem Dafoe's character suspects that Bateman is guilty, and Willem Dafoe's character does not suspect Bateman at all. So they had Willem Dafoe do three different takes with those three different kind of like viewpoints on the situation, and then the scene is presented in such a way where they're using bits of each take in that scene. It's a fantastic scene. He's got a few scenes with him. So he interviews him once. He comes back to his office later, and then there's another scene where they're having like lunch or something. Uh, the film was very polarizing. I remember when this movie came out, I had a coworker that said she went to go see it. It was basically like, I don't want to say traumatized necessarily, but said that she said it was very disturbing, even to the point where if a song came on the radio that was in the soundtrack, it was kind of like slightly triggering. So like it was, and you can definitely see like, there's some scenes from if you're looking at it from a female like viewpoint that would be incredibly disturbing. Like the scenes where he brings people to his apartment, incredibly messed up. Like regardless of like female or not female. But if you're a woman looking at watching that, it could be very disturbing, which makes it interesting that they have a female director for this movie, which I think is like maybe adds a little bit to that as well. One other thing I really like about this film is they constantly mention the restaurant Dorsia. The funny thing about it is, I can actually close it up now, and then we'll get to the plot. But the funny thing with this Dorsia restaurant is it's mentioned many times throughout the movie. At one point, Paul Allen has a reservation to it because he mentions that right before the business card scene starts. And he's like, he gives, I think he's Justin Theroux's character is like, hey, squash, like you want to play some squash? He's like, gives him the business card. He's like, hey, call me. He's like, what about Friday? He's like, no, can't do. I got an 8:30 at Dorsia, and he leaves. And they're like he's like 8:30, like Dorsia reservation at 8:30 on a Friday. How did he pull that off? So Dorsia is constantly mentioned. It's this restaurant that basically none of the characters that we know, with the exception of Paul Allen, could get into. At one point, Patrick Bateman actually calls Dorsia to get like a reservation. He's like, "Hey, can I get a reservation tonight at 8?" And they just like laugh at him. So it's this like kind of interesting, like unobtainable thing that like kind of like this holy city, like Mecca, like kind of thing that like there's a lot of talk of it, but nobody can get into it. I remember reading some fan theories on Reddit about it, where Dorsia is essentially supposed to be like the equivalent of heaven, and none of them, with the exception of Paul Allen, could even get into it. And that's providing that Paul Allen's character, or Paul Allen, is even telling the truth. Because at one point, after they mentioned that he has a reservation, they're like, "How do you pull that off?" He's like, "Oh, no, he's probably lying or whatever." Like somebody says he's lying about it. But yeah, just this interesting thing that it's mentioned so many times in the movie, and it's never actually shown. Like at the beginning of the movie, they're actually at a restaurant where they're like, and Justin Theroux's character, I think Bryce, is just like, they look at the bill and they're like, "Hey, this is reasonable. It's $500," and it's like, so like I did like a screenshot of the bill when I was watching it, but it's still kind of like not, you can't really tell what they actually ordered. But then they just dropped their credit cards on there. It's kind of like, considering that they're like paying like 100 something each for dinner, it's still, that's pretty expensive. But they're like, I guess, reasonable for like New York investment bankers from the 1980s, I guess. Let me just move this thing around. That little, let me see where that actual little bookmark went. Oh, there it is. Okay. It's kind of just stuck in there. We'll get it in a second. Anyway, we're now going to move into the plot of this movie. And this movie holds up, like I said, holds up to multiple viewings. The movie is left fairly ambiguous. I guess I'll kind of just wrap up the concept of the film. Basically, I think that the film, like, I haven't read the book, so I think the author was, the book, apparently from what I was reading, is a little bit much more ambiguous. I think the movie actually more pushes you toward the direction of what, like, looking at it one way. And the way is, Patrick Bateman did the stuff in the movie that we see, or a lot of it is just all in his head, because there's parts where he's like, "Hey, I just saw Paul Allen like a couple weeks ago in Europe, and he was murdered like a month ago or whatever it was." Anyhow, so Patrick Bateman is this kind of investment or executive at this thing. He's going out with, I think it's Reese Witherspoon's character, And he's keeping up this facade of like that he's like a successful businessman. He has a very like stringent kind of like physical like training. He does a bunch of crunches. He's like, when my eyes are puffy, I put a little the ice pack on and I do my stomach crunches. When I take a shower, I use these products. And he's like a lot of his speech is just like by design is just incredibly pretentious, especially when he's talking about music. But he was talking about like his like body care routine. He's like, I use this. I don't use this because it has too much alcohol in it. It will dry your skin out. I put this mask on, and he's like, I take the mask off, and am I actually Patrick Bateman? I forget exactly what the line was, but it's stuff like that. So then after his little like training thing, they're all at dinner. That's when they get that like $500 bill or whatever it was. Then they have their little meeting where we establish the business cards. Um, After that, I think like Patrick Bateman, you see him walking, and he like this homeless guy's like, "Hey, I need some help," and he like Patrick Bateman like stabs a guy, and stomps on his dog. And then he goes out to dinner with Paul Allen. I think Paul Allen is still mistaking him as this other character. So they go to dinner. Paul Allen's kind of drunk. They're at Bateman's house, and Bateman's like laid out newspaper everywhere. And Paul Allen's like, "Hey, you got a dog? Like a little like a pom or I think he called it like a was it like a chow or something?" And he's like, "You like Huey Lewis in the news?" And Paul Allen's like, "Yeah, they're all right." And then he puts on their album Four. I do agree, Four is actually a very good album. But he's got a raincoat on. Paul Allen's like, "Why you got a raincoat on?" And he's going into this whole speech about. He's like, "I really think they came to their own with this album." And like, he's like, he just goes on these huge pretentious like I don't want to call it tirades about like the music. He's like, they really came into their own with this album. And then he's like, "Hey, Paul," and he swings an axe and he's like chopping him up. And then he's like, "Try to get a reservation at now at Dorsia." And he's like, "Try to get a reservation now at Dorsia, you loser," or whatever he says. And he lights up a cigar. Um, Uses Paul Allen's keys, goes into his house, like leaves an outgoing message on Paul's machine saying that he's going to be in like London for however long. Does some more business meeting stuff. I think like tries to get a reservation for. It's like he's like there's a coworker Lewis, and it's like he's taking care of his girlfriend. He's basically sleeping with Lewis's girlfriend on the side as well. But tries to get a reservation at Dorsey, and that's kind of when they laugh at him. This is then when Willem Dafoe's character starts questioning Patrick Bateman on what's going on. I kind of mentioned already the whole thing being filmed three different ways, which is just really cool. There's much more kind of just a go around and going to like these like business dinners and things like that. Um, he hires like I think he basically hires a couple prostitutes and goes to his apartment with them, or I think he's actually in Paul Allen's apartment at this point. But goes to Paul Allen's apartment and he puts on like a Genesis CD, and this is like the most pretentious. Like he's like their earlier stuff was too arty for me, but I really enjoyed like and he's like this that and like I can't even like emulate how he's like talking about it. But he's like they really came into. He's like I gotta say they really came into their own. That's from the Huey Lewis speech. But he's just like he's like their ultimate song is actually Invisible Touch, a classic modern like pop masterpiece, like stuff like that. Sleeps with them and then like basically like he wakes up in the middle of the night, gets like a hanger. He's like, "We're not through yet," and then they leave. Um, not Halishran. Willem Dafoe's character tries to like questions him again. And he's like, "Hey, let's like do lunch like one of these days." So they do that. He then eventually is at another dinner with I think Bryce and Van Patten, and the other character Lewis pops up, and tying back to the business card scene, he's like, "Hey, look at my business card! I got one too." And it's like he's actually got gold embossed like font on his card, and he goes into the restroom and tries to like strangle this guy. He's got like gloves on. Patrick Bateman does, and the Lewis like mistakes it as like him like trying to come on to him, and he's like, "Patrick, I never knew you felt this way about me. I've been feeling about this way too." And Patrick Bateman's like, "Okay, I'm out of here." And he's like, "Hey, Patrick, call me." And like he's just like, "No, like we're done." He eventually breaks up. Bateman eventually breaks up with his girlfriend, played by Reese Witherspoon. She's in the movies for just like a little bit. I'm probably skipping over like a lot of like. Oh no, he basically calls one of the more disturbing scenes in the movie. He finds that prostitute again, and she's like, "Hey, after that last visit, I might need surgery." and then like she's like, I don't. He gives her some money, drives by, gives her more money. She gets back in the car, and they are having like a bunch of wine. He actually drugs the wine, and he's sleeping with these two women, and one of them wakes up in the middle of the night and like there's like blood all over the sheets, and he's like biting one of these people, and then like he chases after one of them with a chainsaw, and basically, if you know the scene, she's running down the apartment stairs. It's filmed from the top down, and you see her kind of going down, down, and he's like trying to figure out where she is, and he just drops the chainsaw, and it's like tumbling, and it lands on her, and he's just like aha, or whatever he does. He does this crazy, like very twisted kind of laugh. At one point, he goes back to Paul Allen's apartment. Oh no, I guess I should say his secretary comes over at one point, and he's planning on killing her as well. He's got like a nail gun to her head at one point that she doesn't know about, and she's eating like gelato or ice cream or something, and she's putting the spoon on the table. He's like, no, put it in the container. And he's like, okay. He's like, I don't want to hurt you. She's like, I should probably leave. And he's actually got like the head of one of these people like in his refrigerator at this point. But she leaves, and he goes to the bank, and the ATM is like, feed me a cat. So he grabs a cat. This lady comes up to him, and he ends up shooting her. He shoots at some cops. Like a cop car gets blown up by like one like a couple shots. So it's kind of weird because he even looks at the gun and he's like, what? He goes into his office. He calls his lawyer, confesses to all these murders. He's like, hey, I killed Paul Allen. I killed these ladies. I killed like probably like 20 or 30 people over over how long. I even ate some of their brains at some point. So he confesses to all this stuff. And then the next day at lunch, his lawyer's there, and his lawyer's like, hey, that was very funny. He's like, what? He's like, your whole thing about killing Paul Allen, because I literally just had lunch with Paul Allen like a week ago. And he's like, what? How is that possible? And then at the end of the movie, this is what is kind of left ambiguous, as if all this is just in Patrick Bateman's head or if it actually happened. It's just kind of a fantastic kind of like, it's supposed to be like a satire of the kind of like a satire of like Wall Street, not necessarily like the movie Wall Street, but that kind of well, I guess the movie too, but a satire of the kind of like 80s, like mid 80s Wall Street culture, and it satirizes it really well. It's got a lot of dark humor into it. It's great for multiple viewings. Like I said, like a lot of stuff I didn't necessarily pick up on my first viewing, like especially with like the business cards, where I'm like, well, they are all the same, and then because like that scene, I've watched that scene on YouTube like many times. But it's just a really interesting film. Like I think the author of the book initially thought it would be like unfilmable. And I think the author was saying something about how they wished it was a little bit more ambiguous in the film, because I think the film does really push you toward that it didn't happen. Like there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make a lot of like it, like when he attacks the homeless guy in the street, there's nobody else around. You can kind of like hand wave that away and be like, okay, it's a dark alley, middle of the night. It's it's cold apparently in that scene, so it's kind of likely that nobody would be there. But when he's chasing the lady around the apartment with a chainsaw, she's like banging on doors of other like apartments in the building. Nobody's coming out. Nobody's like opening the door to investigate what's going on and why there's a chainsaw. Like nobody's getting woken up by this chainsaw. So I think it does kind of push you to thinking that this is like wish fulfillment from Patrick Bateman. Like he's like wishing he could do this, or maybe like doing it in his mind. Um, just a very interesting movie, and I highly recommend checking it out. Like I said, I rewatched it again recently, streamed it on Amazon. But I'm really starting to like pick up like getting back into 2000s nostalgia, like I guess 2000 through like 2009, so like that 10 years. So I'm really looking forward to doing more of these. I haven't nailed the schedule down for this series yet. I'm thinking we'll be doing them at least once a week, putting them up on probably on Mondays. I might expand that to more episodes at some point, or maybe we'll do one 90s episode, one 2000s episode. Again, I don't know exactly how the schedule will work out. But for now, I'm planning on doing probably like at least one a week for this particular series. So that'll do it for this video. We'll be back, I guess in a week, doing a video game. A lot of really great video games came out in the in this decade. So I'm really looking forward to covering some of those games. So just remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. We'll see you again next time. Thanks again for watching. Take care and have a good one. See ya.